Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Social agencies and vacant houses is in the focus of our scope. Increasing availability is the topic of our conference. So let me start by asking my Budapest colleague, Esther Solmany, Metropolitan Institute, the situation about social agencies.
So I'm Esther Somodi from Budapest, from Metropolitan Research Institute. Many of you are familiar with social rental agencies, but I just give a quick definition. So social rental agencies are those organizations who rent private rental apartments from the market to include it in the social and affordable housing provision. They take over risks from the private landlords, and in turn, they can negotiate lower rent than those are in the market. So maybe two important things here to note. That the rent reduction they can achieve during the negotiation of with private landlords depends very much how competitive the local private rental market. And the second one, to include more vulnerable groups in their target groups, they need some kind of rent subsidy, because even the rent is lower that they can negotiate with private landlords is still quite high for lower income groups, for vulnerable groups. How social rental agency, as when they emerge in the Central and Eastern European countries. So from the as early as 2010, some social service providers started to include private rentals in specific programs. These were small-scale programs and short-term programs to provide housing mainly for homeless people. But gradually, it became more popular as housing crisis deepened in these countries. So even from the mid-2010s, more and more NGOs started to develop social rental agency activities in their everyday operation. And even from 2010, municipalities started to establish their own social rental agencies. Okay, so maybe I won't have my presentation, sorry. Okay. So maybe we can I can refer to projects that we were involved related to this. So in 2013, we got together with Habitat for Humanity Hungary, we got a grant from the Open Society Foundations to develop the first feasibility study under social rental agency in Hungary, how they can be established. And then from 2016 to 2019, we had a 3-year social experimental project funded by EASY, the ESF money, and we included 5 NGOs in it, and to develop social rental agencies and to develop social integrated social services, housing, employment, and social services in one package. So what kind of organizations the organization forms the social rental agency have? Both the municipalities and NGOs. We could see that that they didn't really develop an independent, separate agency organization, but they operate this model inside in the framework of their organizational structure. So, for example, municipalities established these activities in their service, social service center, or their asset management companies run such models, and NGOs also just have established a branch inside their organization that do rent social private rental apartments and sublet it to their target groups. But who are the target groups? Typically, there are two types of target groups. The low-income people, households, usually who have regular incomes, but not enough to rent on the market and cannot get access to home ownership. And secondly, the more vulnerable groups. But to include vulnerable groups, they need some kind of rent subsidies. But you were very familiar that in these countries, the welfare state, the welfare system is very weak. So how to finance these rent subsidies? Only in the Czech Republic, there is a national rent allowance scheme that they can use in the social rental agencies. In other places, let's say in Slovakia, there is a housing allowance, but the amount is very insufficient. It's around 60 euro. And also this is the same in Hungary, but only municipalities provide some housing allowances. This is not enough. So what these social rental agencies do then, some of them include municipal stock as well. Some in order to cross-finance rents. So they ask, let's say, higher rent for municipal flats, and from the plus revenue that they gain from this, they subsidize private rentals as well. But for others who include municipal flats, they just give the cheaper municipal flat for the more vulnerable people and give the private flats for more well-off people, let's say, but still low-income people. So, but what's the interest behind that municipalities gives their flat to the social rental agencies? There are two main reasons for that. First, because they have some empty stock and they don't have the financing to renew these flats. And the NGOs usually renew the flat, and then they can use it for a certain period of time. But the other reason is that also municipalities find really risky to rent their apartments to some vulnerable groups like homeless people, Roma families, refugees. So they are happy to include NGOs who provide social work and other services for these vulnerable groups, and they just provide the housing. So it's a kind of win-win situation for both the NGOs and for both the municipalities. Okay, so we see that the housing portfolio, so it's a kind of mixed portfolios, and it's even true in the municipal social rental agencies. Let's say in Hungary, one of the districts just established a social rental agency, and they put some of their stock into the agency in kind to manage that, and they can ask some higher prices, so they can cross-subsidize those from the private rental market, and they use the same price, the same brand for municipal and private rental units. Okay, so what kind of financing resources are available for social rental agency to finance their operation? Of course, they collect the rent, but they have to pay the rent to the private owners, So basically, they don't have any own revenue from these activities, and usually there is no national funding for this activity from the central government. So municipalities, some of the municipalities who run this scheme, they finance from their own revenue, from their own budget, and the NGOs finance also from their own budget many things which they collect, like crowdfunding or from CRS funding. So big companies support these NGOs. So we can see that it's very much the private sector who, even if it's the individual and companies who finance now these activities and not the central government. They also can rely on some grants, ESF grants, some national specific programs that they can house some specific groups. Let's say homeless people, these are housing first programs, for example. They use this social rental model very much. But there is no some kind of normative funding available for these activities. Okay, so what is the scope of these social rental agencies? I had a table. Sorry not to show you. So let's say in Prague, they established the main municipality of Prague. They established 3 years ago a social rental agency. Now they have 50 flats from the private rental market, and they house mainly people from homeless shelters, asylum centers, and from overcrowded bed housing. In Budapest, there is one social rental agency. They have started it 2, 3 years ago, and they reached 33 housing units. And it's very similar for other social housing agencies. So now they run, the scope of their program is about between 30 and 50 units. And there is a reason for this, because after this, with this size of the stock, you can manage with relatively low number of staff, so few people, even including social workers, and you don't have to develop a very fine procedure to do this. But above this, so beyond the 50 units, we interviewed several social rental agencies. You have to develop a much more standardized procedures for procuring the housing from the market, to provide social work, to do the billing, to check on the payments of the tenants, say for public utilities and all these things. So they would really need much more organizational development, and they would need some funding, some more permanent funding from also the government. So we can see that social rental agencies is something that is also municipalities are interested, especially that the pressure on them to provide housing for lower income households is growing, especially in big cities. And NGOs deal more with the more vulnerable groups, but they also deal with, let's say, some of the Hungarian NGO. They provide housing for social workers, because social workers earn quite small amount, and they need housing. So this is one of their specific target groups. But they would need to increase their stock. They would need organizational development. Also the NGOs, which is a kind of dilemma for them, because then they would be a kind of professional housing company, and then there is a dilemma whether they want to be that or not. So some of the main conclusions in this regard that scaling up social rental agencies have some main challenges: the lack of permanent funding for their operational costs, and the rent allowance, the lack of rent allowance system in these countries, and also they have to deal with the under-regulation of the private rental market still. So to improve the regulation of the market, it's still a challenge that is in front of these countries. And also we can see that social rental agencies is a very good solution to rapidly increase the housing provision, the affordable housing provision in a city, and but in the long term it cannot really substitute the expansion of the social housing stock, the public housing stock. So it is. We see that this is a complementary solution, but not instead of developing the public sector. And I don't know whether I've run out of the time or not. No, not yet. Okay, so I was also asked to speak about a little bit about the experiments related to use empty spaces, buildings in the social housing, affordable housing provision. And in Budapest, there is an interesting project that was funded by the European urban initiatives, the old urban innovative actions, and it is to use public building and repurposing into social housing. And we just had, together with Habitat for Humanity International, a project in Moldova to use empty building to house refugees and other vulnerable groups in the country. And so what is the advantage to do such projects and not to build a completely new one? First of all, it is a lack of the land that these cities struggle with, this problem. And secondly, it's a quicker solution. So in 1 year, practically, you can have the new units, the new housing, and usually it's a much longer process in case of new construction. But while you developing this kind of projects, there should be a really big emphasis on doing very energy efficient building that gives the possibility for lower maintenance costs also for these poorer tenants, so they can enjoy better quality of housing because it is insulated, it has a good layout, it is equipped with all the utilities and basic amenities, and also they can pay lower costs like in the traditional housing costs, energy costs, heating costs, also for, let's say, water and etc. So we think that it is a very important aspect of this project, that the poorest one should enjoy the positive results of the energy efficient renewals. Okay, so that was my introduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther. I'd like to apologize for technicalities. We didn't have the presentation. Apologies to our listeners. Sorry for the inconvenience of our session. May this be the first and the last one at the same time. Alena Muzio-Wensławowicz, I'm into social housing sector in Poland, and it's my honor and pleasure to chair this session focused on social rental agencies and activities associated with vacant houses so that we increase flat availability for people in need, for people who need prices with lower price access level. And we have Dr. Radosław Ceran, Anna Kolasińska, Joanna Kot, Tomasz Lewandowski, Andrzej Radniecki. This has been alphabetical order. The panelists are requested to tell us a few words about themselves when I ask them the first question, and the idea is as follows. There'll be 2 questions, 2 rounds of questions to each of the speakers. If you feel the pressure and urge to comment or ask questions, let me know before we finish so that I have some time earmarked for Q&A session, because probably we shall run out of time.
So this is me. I theoretically should refrain from introducing this part, but still I will. I will start with this kind of a lofty statement. I had a dream. I have a dream. You know very well who this quotation belongs to. Well, my personal dream is that SRAs are the first institutional solution in Poland that could help us make a difference somewhere between institutions and target audience. Rental is frequently associated with many negative opinions. People blacken the other party in case of any failures. Well, here we are talking about a very open formula. So our hope is that cooperation among individuals, that is, owners of flats, SRAs, and the tenants taking the offering into, taking advantage of this offering, can be indeed done in a humane way. So, the first will be the speakers that have some experiences when it comes to SRAs. Last year, we talked about plans. Well, now we can already discuss first effects and plans for the future. So, Anna Kolasińska will take the floor first. Anna, tell us, please, more about the social rental agency that you represent, the one in Dąbrowa Górnicza. What's the current status of your organization and what's your next steps? Hi, I am Anna Kolasińska. I am head of Habitat for Humanity Poland Silesia Region Housing Department. So this SRA was established last year as part of a pilot program in cooperation with the local government, that is the municipality of Dąbrowa Górnicza. We received financial support called Wzajemnie Potrzebny from the Chancellor of the Prime Minister of Poland and the city Dąbrowa Górnicza. The model was designed by experts, including the local government inviting an NGO to cooperation, and the government provides support, funding, and expertise. Last year, we were tasked with the following scope of activity: 30 apartments. We achieved that. Right now, we have 26 resources that belong to the municipality. We renovated them, and 4 commercial apartments. The next stage will be to gain other additional 30 apartments. We've signed proper contracts, and at this point, we are submitting applications, and 6 families have now moved into our flats, 4 Polish families and 2 Ukrainian families, all of them residing in Dąbrowa Górnicza. So this is just my short intro. Thank you. And the same question goes to Tomasz Lewandowski. What was the motivation of the city of Poznań in its consistent long-term activity to promote social rental agencies? Good afternoon. My name is Tomasz Lewandowski. Indeed, I represent Poznań, and I have the pleasure to manage a company that is to 100% owned by the local government. And Poznań tasked this company with a public mission to satisfy housing needs. So we are part of the housing policy pursued by the city. We started this project in the year 2018. At that time, it was called the Municipal Office for Rental. It was actually just a pilot program because this institution has not been governed by law. And there were many doubts on whether a company like that can be subsidized by the city or not. So we were pioneering this path. In fact, we also made our contribution into the new act. Now, you also asked about our motivation. Poznań has a very low access to communal housing. It's 130,000 items only. It's really a very low share. Every year, we will distribute about 300 such apartments to residents eligible to get this. But there are 5 times as many people in need of communal housing. People who can't afford renting a flat commercially, and yet we are not able to provide them with housing. So looking at these scarce resources, we turned to the private market, whereby we rented flats, and initially we would pay a contribution to rent. Right now this is regulated by law, so it's paid 1-to-1. So the money that is paid to the owner is also the rent which is paid by the resident. Initially, there were 260 apartments at our disposal, so there was a big gap to be filled. At this point, we were able to launch this statutory model of SRA. Until the end of this year, we will have 100 apartments. So far, we've gained 80 from private owners, and we now have 40 tenants. So there is quite a long queue of people waiting to get more of them. And at the next round, I will be happy to share more with you about funding details. You should not be scared. And Social Rental Agency indeed is a body that can get apartments from the private market much cheaper to the benefit of the target audience. Thank you very much. And now moving on to Wrocław. Joanna Kot. So would you be so kind and tell us more about the housing situation in Wrocław? What's the local residential policy, and how come you got interested in appointing a social rental agency? Hello. So briefly, how come we have an SRA? Well, I represent the City of Public Aid that also deals with housing. Indeed, the situation in Wrocław is quite untypical because they have access to flats. And the Center for Public Policy in Wrocław indeed has access to the flats, and they are able to rent these flats, which is really very different if you look at other cities in Poland. Yeah. That's true. So we have several programs dedicated to different groups. One of them is renting flats, whereby we either pay full rent or part of the rent. We have 300 such flats, quite a lot indeed. And this is a social housing institution. And we are concentrated mainly on some social aspects. We want to satisfy housing needs of the most vulnerable people, such as adoptees, homeless, senior citizens, or people who agreed to give away their housing, their social housing unit, because the rent was too high. So based on those different options, we came up with the following idea. Shall we have our own SRA? And we concluded, actually, we don't need it to cover the needs of our beneficiaries. So we were wondering what gap could be filled. Wrocław, indeed, is a very specific city with 31,000 flats. So the social housing units pool is quite high. Every year we get 270 applications for such social housing. We are able to sign as many as 600 contracts per year. I'm talking here about social housing rental of units that should be renovated. And we are able to assign only 100 social housing units. So part and parcel of contracts signed with residents are about rental of flats to be renovated. Having analyzed the applications, we came to the conclusion that 1,200 applications a year are rejected because the level of income is a little bit exceeded. And precisely for this group, we decided to appoint a social rental agency. This was by far not easy. Being a public institution, we are not in touch with those people in most cases. They don't come for help to us. On the other hand, the housing policy is very much intertwined with the social policy these days. That's why we came to the conclusion that the income level is not so high in that case, because a big problem with the resource that we have is that these are very old flats, old mansion houses, over 100 years old. So the costs of renovation can be gigantic. Even if you can get access to this flat, you won't get a mortgage loan to renovate it. This has been seen very frequently. We keep postponing these dates because people tell us that due to financial reasons, they are not able to renovate the housing units received from us because they don't have the money. So that's the group that we are targeting. So if someone can pay the rent, but they can't afford to renovate the flat, they have some level of income so that they are eligible to get such a flat. Now, for this group, we decided to appoint the social rental agency. We've just completed all the procedures, and believe me, it was not easy. We signed an agreement with a public benefit organization. It actually happened last week, so it's a very recent thing. At the point of preparing that agreement, we actually started cooperation with such an organization. And as part of the contract that we concluded, this organization, together with us and the municipality, we are planning to add about 180 flats into the pool of social rental agency for a 5-year contract. Right now, we are proceeding with all the formalities. Also, we reserved the right in this organization to verify all contracts in order to protect our residents. so that rental contracts signed under SRA are safe. It's also about receiving subsidies. So we wanted to supervise that situation because it's still quite a novelty. And we also used the support of my colleague from Poznań. We had some study visits to Poznań where we could learn from their experiences. And I mean, let me be frank, a big city that has so many flats, it's not so easy to find justification. Someone could say, hey, you have so many flats. How come you are now using flats from the private market? Well, in this case, as I said, it is justified. Many people can't afford renovating the flats. They can pay a bit more for rental, but they can't pay for renovation of old housing units. Thank you very much. And the next question goes to Andrzej Ledniecki. It's great to have the representation of Poland's Ministry of Family, Labor and Social Policy here. So my question to you, sir, first of all, what's the role of social economy in the development of SRAs? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Andrzej Ledniecki, head of the Social Economy Department and the Ministry of Family, Labor and Social Policy. Most of my professional life, I've been dealing with social economy. However, recently, I changed a little bit for a moment, and that was very valuable. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. So, for 1 year and a half, I took part in preparing a pilot project that has been mentioned before. And the project that was participated, for example, by Dąbrowa Górnicza City. And Magda Ruszkowska-Cieślak is smiling. She's my dear colleague. And together we've cooperated on this project. And that was truly important. Even though I had spent so many years in the area of social economy, I had never before had seen such housing policy in this particular social context. That pilot project was indeed quite innovative, in my opinion. And indeed, I think such actions should be continued. I believe we were able to do something in the area of recovering vacant housing units for the society. We were able to mobilize some investment funds, and it's really not easy to gain such investment funding, and in this case, it worked out. I think what's innovative about this project is something that we will need more and more of, which is, apart from the housing topic, we have been able to create a playing field for other social problems. It's about social activation, professional activation, support of the labor market, social services. And this is where it all comes into play. I think an important channel or area, or however you phrase it, are precisely the social services which can be carried out and provided by social rental agencies. And that's quite crucial. We know what is the target audience of SRAs. These are people who are in difficult life situations. People who, for some reasons, need to have access to the rental of flats at lower rates, not the commercial ones. At the same time, we can offer different forms of support by these social services. So institutions of social economy are quite well placed because you asked about the potential of social economy. Well, I believe that they are perfectly fit to carry out such tasks. And remember about this our pilot project. I like to call it our because I believe I'm one of the fathers. So you indeed helped us prepare this project, and all the institutions that took part also accepted that burden of the new risky task, which is to create SRAs.
And these bodies that took up the challenge are the foundation stone of social economy. They become social economy when they embrace specific functions from the point of view of public policies. So these are related with social and professional reintegration, social services provision. So this seems to be a perfect bridge that brings about lots of potential. Still unused, as it seems.
We should be blocking these policies come.
It meets social policies, so this is the place for great potential and the challenge for the future. So it's worth embracing this direction. There's much to be done. It's worth bringing the greatest possible number of people together, stakeholders, NGOs. It's still ahead of us. Thank you very much. I want to refer to the introductory lecture by Esther Shamoji and indicate that we are not in bad situation when it comes to social rental agency. We have subsidies for social houses for those who have the rights of rental in agencies. We've got intermediate instruments that motivate private owners to rent to an agency.
Yes, they're probably.
And we have a broad spectrum of prospective participants on the tenant side. Those with the most difficult situation when it comes to housing, homelessness, as a matter of fact,
Yes.
for groups that are not in that bad situation, but because of formal reasons, they do not qualify for communal, but they are in the rent gap where they cannot have a loan. So the question goes to Radosław Ceran, who is going to introduce himself. And let's state it bluntly. What can communes do? What else can they do? Or the government? So that there's wind in social agencies' sail and they continue their operation. Good afternoon, Radosław Ceran, University of Economics, Strategic Research Chair. We create local policies and many-year programs, and I collaborate with Habitat. We have been working on the implementation of the French-Belgian solution in Poland. I remember my collaboration with Magdalena initially. There were two concepts clashing. Is SRA to help people who are homeless stepping out of the crisis, or is it more targeted at what the colleague said, people who have income slightly too big that disqualifies them for the municipal resources and too poor to have one from the market? The market will respond to this question, but there is one thing to remember. After many changes, legal regulations support setting up SRAs. If we have incentives for owners, you're exempt from income tax. We speak 8.5% bulk you lease it to SRA, as President said, would be a municipal company or a foundation or an association. Still, on the other side, this is socially credible from the point of view of finances. So, if we have some SRA buying the risks of damage from the lesser and processing the rental things for 5 years, so they are quite positive about letting it out to SRI, be it a foundation or a company. This depends on local conditions. So the question is, last year we had a pilot program, and Habitat's pilot program that was parallel to the first one. And the communes fall into two groups, innovative and reserved, conservative. If we look through Poznań, Stargard, Katowice, Dąbrowa Górnicza perspective, they know how to deliver housing policy. They might have a strategic document or an internal document which informs them and people around how to solve problems. To my liking, they have to make contribution the first phase. Well, how much? President Tomasz Lewandowski will answer this question, but if we are to acquire abodes for local milieus whose housing needs are unsatisfied, we can choose the most expensive legal form, communal buildings, believing that 20% is the commune's contribution, 80% subsidy from the National BGK Bank, but the average cost of producing 1 square meter is 8,000 zlotys. It is last year's data. So 1,600 per square meter from municipalities. Some communes are even more innovative. They try to use this communal through social cooperatives. Katowice is the example. So communal building society can take 80% plus 10% for housing in association with the commune. It's only 10% of general cost on the municipality. These are more expensive models of supplying flats. So we've got the cheaper way, that is SRA. Communes, according to my last year's observations, were quite conservative. Thinking about setting up SRA, they don't know the format. They don't know the threats. So the communes wait sitting on their hands. They're observing Dąbrowa, Poznań, Wrocław to see whether they are successful. If they are successful, they believe this to be a safe area that they can enter and deliver the SRA. Let's think about the decision makers. That is the municipality that should initiate specific initiatives together with a company, municipal company or foundation. They are to play on this play field. The legal regulations that were created at the the level of national acts are optimal for these undertakings, bearing in mind that this is one of the missing elements to manage the existing resources in an effective way. We keep saying that floods are unavailable, that we are short of them, but we should see this through the perspective of vacant houses, to make use of private vacant houses or flats. So reuse them, redecorate them, refurbish them, and SRA is nicely fits into this picture. So it's the municipality that is to decide. They should be more courageous. They should be less conservative.
And that's something to confirm.
I'd like to say that two programs are important, and the high commissioners and the ones organized by a foundation that popularizes the social rental agency. We've got one more activity. It will impact the SUN perspective in Poland, SRA perspective in Poland. This fund will subsidize the SUN's activity, be it the final organizational stage or activity stage. So there is specific support that contributes towards the increase of the number of SRAs in Poland. And now the question goes back to Anna Kolasińska. We know, we've heard that there are social services thing, the support services, a flat or a boat plus social support plus social services for these tenants groups that are most endangered by exclusion, that are worth helping in a broader spectrum rather than direct abode provision. So what do you think about this? Before I answer this question, let me return to my colleagues. Speaking about us, the foundation, there is social economy perspective. We are a foundation. We collaborate with many local non-governmental organizations and social cooperatives, believing this to be the only right direction. Bringing social and housing policies together, we know that very well because Dąbrowa Górnicza manages this in one municipal department, and we have the same idea as that beacon for us. So Habitat boasts experience in social rental programs. We amassed it for the last 2 years. These are people that are the subject of interim protection. There's the flat and additional services program. So there's this principle. A flat is just the box that should be filled with energy, active integration, so that we work hand in hand. It is in FS programs, OPS, municipal services programs, communal levels, powiat level, voivodeship level. This is very important. So we focused on this program. It is much more than active integration, not only for excluded people. So this is education, subsidies for professional, vocational trainings, the ones which have been selected from the point of view of participants, and activation. Housing and activation is the working name of the program. And there is social inclusion idea. It's not only about enhancing the people at the educational level and professional level. They should be socially included so that they can deliver their ideas, so that they are not only the recipients, they have some ideas, some experiences. We have participants who returned from UK and the Netherlands. They have fallen into this housing gap, but they can serve the purpose of the general public. This is why we want to express our gratitude to UNHCR for their support for additional services. We have large-scale workshop in the pipeline that will be delivered by NGOs and social cooperatives. Cooperation, networking, bringing housing and social aspects together is the recipe for active housing as the result. And Tomasz Lewandowski, the city of Poznań, how do you cope with vacant houses in communal resources and private resources rented by SRA? They would have been vacant houses, but for SRAs. They would not be let because there were some technical problems. Many themes were touched in this discussion. Let me refer to a number of them. We have had a number of years of experience in SRA, and SRA, as stipulated by the Act, I don't believe in bringing private flats acquisition and reintegration programs and programs that combat homelessness. It stems from the fact that we've been engaged in the dialogue with flat owners that made them available for the public institution for sub-rent. Our experience shows that these kind of tools are better delivered through communal resources. Otherwise, why? We had a problem acquiring flats from private owners. So this is the key of the program of what SRA is. If this is the institution to find vacant houses and flats in the market, it's an ideal solution. There is a multitude of situations when we have private owners who did not care about the rent level. They wanted to have somebody as a tenant so that it is heated. They were ready to take the rent, lower level, but for 12 months. They wanted to have a guarantee if something is destroyed, a public institution is ready to refurbish it and transfer the tenant who's done the damage. It's important to realize it. Over the last 10 years, the number of empty flats and houses, both in private and public sector, has doubled. There is almost 2 million empty flats and houses. So public authorities should urgently include these into housing policies. SRA, according to our Poznań experiences, is the institution to do so. SRA is a part of municipal support. If we have somebody who wants to have a flat, lower rent or subsidy for a rent, if they don't pay a rent or destroy the flat, they have no chance to get any help. They score negative points in the scoring if they apply for communal flats. If they pay on time, if they take care of the flat, they've got positive points. So they are almost certain if they want to have city support, they will get a flat. The 4-year experience of our city show that the difference between money transferred into company's account was 2.5%. So this is the risk scale that we face. So we have good management and some kind of debt recovery make the program operational. Risks are not great. We have had 2 situations when a flat was damaged. We reacted swiftly. We refurbished the flat, and the flat stayed in the program. Owners decided to do so. This is very important. Public resources, vacant houses and flats. We've got certain experience here. 2019. Starting 2019, we have diagnosed the problem of vacant houses. 700 out of 12,000 flats of public resources. We need to do something. We're not scared by this, but something that we don't speak about, the rotation.
Until the next tenancy. So to streamline the process, we have applied a method which is used by big production and trade organizations, which is called lean management, by defining where pain points are in order to streamline the whole process. Project studies showed that managing a housing, an empty house unit, was about 900 days until the moment it is inhabited again. Now, from the perspective of those of you who don't know a lot about the reality of housing, social housing, it seems a lot, but believe me, this is just the average. There are hundreds, thousands empty apartments which are not used for the intended purpose. So we were wondering how come this is the case. Whether the only reason is the lack of money. And the answer is no. I'm fully certain that lack of money is the least of the problems. The most serious thing are organizational problems, since the release, from the point of release of the unit until its tenancy to a new person. There are many institutions involved, and it takes such a long time. With this lean management methodology, we were able to shorten this lead time, and we also were able to use 40% more empty houses. Now, it's only 50 days on average until empty houses are inhabited again. This shows the scale of potential that is still there to be unleashed. And finally, let me say, all those of you who are skeptical, think about the following. For almost 2 years in Poland, we see municipalities and companies that can get up to 80% of funding to renovate vacant houses. So if there is loads of money available, believe me, it's not a big philosophy to submit an application in order to get the money. So there is the money available at the tips of your fingertips. So how come the situation is still so bad? Well, let me make a reference to it. Actually, there is a wave of new applications for this subsidy. And again, we are experiencing a situation where local governments have a problem with insufficiency of funding available from the central government. Hopefully, this will change under the new amendment of the Act on Social Forms of Housing Development. But definitely, it's a problem. If we lose this time again, it will take years before communes again take the courage to invest in housing resources. We know it's both costly and tough. Now I'm turning to you, Anna Kot. I understand that your target audience is also quite special, so you don't see a need to include additional social services, right? But What about the future? You will be maybe expanding the scope of activities of the SRA. Would that be an option then? Oh, and by the way, we need to be very brief because we don't have much time and we know that there are some questions in the audience. So let me say the following. We've been talking a lot about housing problems, but remember that social services are not social aid. You see here a reference to social services, which is stipulated in the Act on Social Centers. There are 14 social services that are only partly related to social aid or social assistance. Social services included in the Act span from environment, civic education, health. Only several of them are related to social assistance per se. And the other social services, well, by the way, they've been defined for the very first time. Before, no one had catalogued these social services before. So in the Act on Social Centers, it is said that our social activities shall target different groups, not only the same groups which are targeted by social welfare centers, not only people in different crises. So I would not say at this point that no, we are not going to offer social services. We'll see what the future holds. People who submit applications to our SRA will be subject to questionnaires. We will talk to them. We will verify their needs. So it's about the needs which should be taken into account by a commune so that the commune can address these needs in the local community. This could apply to people with disabilities and other vulnerable groups. Our hope is that people who have taken part in our urban projects and have become economically independent, also independent with respect to their housing, they may be also future clients of SRAs. Well, landlords are skeptical about renting their houses, for example, to the homeless. Well, in our case, we have a long list of people who are waiting for social housing offering, or they can't afford renovating a flat. At the same time, they have successfully participated in different projects. So 4 years ago, we carried out a project whereby people with recommendation from the city welfare center, with kind of a recommendation of this institution, who are seen as promising, then these people can be eligible for getting a unit without a queue, and they can also participate in the offering of an SRA so that they can become independent. Only for maybe temporarily they could use a flat from an SRA. So this group could be also a target group for different services, like, for example, monitoring of their independence. That could be a service that might be in need. We decided that we are going to look into it. We are going to do some diagnostics because we believe that with the new acts, many changes could happen on the housing market. So let me say again, social services shall not only be addressed to those people who are in the most critical situation, but by the way, the SRA Act, as I said, is not referring to social assistance, but only to social services, which is something different. Oh, that reminds me of kind of a funny situation in Belgium. A person that receives social services such people move from the countryside to big cities. And they receive special help because they've moved into a big city. It's about time management, it's about labor. Right. So now, Andrzej, over to you. Andrzej Rydniecki from the ministry. To what extent the Ministry of Family, Labor and Social Policy can aid SRAs that will function as NGOs? Yes, there is such assistance is possible. They may apply for such assistance. But of course, I know that you wish to hear more details. So the money is allocated to SRAs at this point. So right now, since we talked also about social services, the entities of social economy, entities that offer social housing, they have a different form. And yes, they can count on our assistance. I encourage them actually to submit an application for grants which are offered by my ministry, especially those earmarked for social services. So an entity can become an SRA, and even though we don't have the same money where we had a one-stop shop for both investment, social services, labor activation, education, well, it's not as easy anymore right now, but it's really worthwhile utilizing the money that we are offering, especially with regards to social services. There are several programs which are ongoing right now for nurseries, for assistance for people with disabilities. And there is also a program that my department runs, which is dedicated to social enterprises. It will be announced very soon. And we've just been finishing social consultations, and it seems that it's quite transparent the way we are offering the money. It's aimed at reintegrating into the society and social services offered by social undertakings. So I encourage you to get interested in that program. I do hope we will have a one-stop shop, because that would be great. And some true stories show us that it can really work without too much red tape. It's about getting money for carrying out comprehensive mission. Oh, and since we mentioned before a contest organized by our ministry, a contest where you can still apply for until the end of this week. So it's really the final call. Please don't hesitate. By the way, we have been cooperating with another ministry in preparing this contest. Here it's about the social fund of the EU. It's addressed at people in more difficult situations and at developing social services. This is targeted to existing SRAs, but also to promising or prospective SRAs, rather. So have a look at the website of my ministry. We will find plenty of information there.
Thank you
very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've heard some optimistic interventions about SRAs. I will skip my summary and instead I will give the floor to my colleague. I think we would like to warn you so that you don't believe this place thinking that an SRA is a panacea for any issue. That's not the case. So the final question over to you, Radosław Cyran. How should communes position SRAs in their local housing policies so that it brings the best fruit? Well, we've heard some valuable comments that could serve as a great answer to this question. I really welcome the statement that this human factor and this passive approach of communes leads to insufficient results. At this point, I think we have the highest number of instruments in the EU in terms of creating and maintaining and trading real property. It's about both public and private vacant housing units. Right now, it's the local governments that should take the lead. They should use the money which is available. Second of all, that there are many instruments that requires communes to show their will and some own contribution. Unfortunately, communes at the end of 2022 had 73,000 empty housing units. 26,000 of them should be renovated. And in the year 2022, at the same time, they applied for 18% funding, only for a pool of 900 units, 750 in the first half of the year. So the question is whether communes are not interested in having those vacant housing renovated. I understand in some case it's about capital refurbishment, but here you also can get up to 60% of reimbursement. Now, the second question is about social rental agencies. Communes can use the money to subsidize a renovation, but in Dąbrowa Górnicza and in Poznań, we see two different models, and a very different one in Wrocław. The common denominator is, however, that SRA can obtain vacant housing units from the market, but also from the public market. In Katowice, it's about 2,000 units which are vacant. So if a commune wants to apply for renovating, they would not be able physically to carry out so many renovations. So an SRA needs to have a very stable footing. Another thing is social buildings, community, municipality buildings. Right now, people want to include more and more communal building societies. An audit is now carried out, by the way, by one of the institutions. So it's also about communal buildings. And since we are talking also about communal building societies or SIM housing units, again, if you look at statistics, in the year 2022, 1,400 flats were applied for in that formula. In 2023, it was only a bit more than 1,000. So this is the statistics. We have right now 240 such units with 500 communes participating. So that shows that there is potential of institutions and public companies that would be responsible for communal buildings. Now, a question that arises is how come part of communal building societies only manage real property? They also manage shared real property, whereas their main point is to erect buildings to be rented. So there is potential in institutions, in funding. SBC has 35% of grants plus 10% from the government, plus 25% if these investments include environmental innovations. With the participation and 0% or 2% loan, you get a lot of money reimbursed. Also, property is frequently donated by the local, by the city or by the municipality. So you can see both institutional, formal, and legal safeguards. So in fact, what is left is the human factor that we've mentioned before. And since we have here active representatives of local government, I'd like to say that seems to me that what we need is some bit more initiative to utilize the potential.
The communes keep talking about, helping people, especially during electoral campaign, regardless the party banner you're in, will be making them available. We keep in building, will creating conditions for social group, regardless the percentile you're in when it comes to the income board. So it's time to walk the talk. Let me mention that the autumn call for proposal means 2 million feasible applications. Some of them are utopia, and 2 billion is earmarked for support. And we've got Włodzimierz Witakowski. A brief comment or intervention, I believe, or is it a question? It's a comment. I need to tell you that I've been surprised that an American foundation, Habitat for Humanity, has not promoted the American solutions in our market. And one of these solutions is what I believe is the result of American experiences that has been transferred to Poznań, or is it Poznań's own idea? In Poland, 1,040,000 empty flats. Out of this, 200 or 400,000 should be available in order to have greater supply of abodes, especially the ones that are not leased, because of what Ms. Krzekotowska was speaking about, or the University of Economics representative. There is a certain fear that there might be some kind of appropriation or destruction. American or Poznań examples, the risk is taken over by the municipality or the city itself. What is an important element is the name. It's a municipal company, so this is the city that is responsible. The social rental agency does not guarantee this kind of security for the lesser. So, the city can lease and sub-rent to other tenants a certain group of flats, and there is a group of flats with difficult legal situation, mainly in Warsaw, Krakow. Communes manage these flats. They have at their disposal, but they don't rent them because they do not have the ownership title. They are afraid of court rulings, but these can be the subject of short-term lease. They can be leased to those that guarantee short-term return on investment, so that we can boost the facilities supply in the market. Thank you. We ran out of time. One comment or one remark, please.
Okay. It was a question, actually. Is a question in English? Okay. Yeah. Could you give us a quick overview of the legal journey, of like the legal architecture you went through to enable you to do an SRA, like from the first maybe pilots which didn't have a legal definition or at the central level, and how did that manage to work in practice, and maybe the documents or the milestones you achieved, and also what more legal, let's say, terms or documents you would need in the future to make it even better.
Okej, rozumiem, że chodzi o społeczne agencje najmu i jest tłumaczenie.
Let me put it this way. Starting 2015, we had a research development program in Poland by Habitat for Humanity Poland. The program was designed to analyze different options on how to implement social rental agencies in Poland. Habitat for Humanity Foundation acquired European money for implementation of test-bed SRA. It focused on social services and most vulnerable tenants groups, mainly refugees from all corners of the world, because it was before the Ukrainian war. These experiences and interest of municipalities that were the leaders resulted in the fact that central level government started thinking about legal regulations, but there was a plethora of partners. They were quite seriously treated, and the act that is binding law now is the one that broadly promotes a great number of SRA solutions, be it as the support instrument or financial instrument. I'd like to have more of them. This is my personal opinion, like tax deductions and similar. So there is great openness when it comes to social groups that are prospective targets of SRAs. You can decide from the weakest one to that are not that poor, but they just start their professional career. We had two legal changes that were to the benefit. It is the Act on Social Rental Agencies. It was about own resources of the agency and the possibility of making use of subsidies to refurbish and renovate flats, including private flats, that are then re-rented or sub-rented by SRA. So the legislative route is okay. These have been positive changes, but we would like to have more solutions in Poland. A greater support from communes when it comes to program realization. At the end of the day, I disagree with Mr. Witekowski. At the end of the day, the responsibility for management or operation of the agency rests with the municipality, regardless whether this is a communal organization, NGO that is the manager,